Different airlines, different lessors, and they bring their own procedures or how to approach any bigger problem. So even maintenance action where you have been already proficient on previous aircrafts, this airline might bring different procedures.
In-house maintenance, they might get a call from very top level people saying, guys, we need to have this specific aircraft in the air within approximately next 2 days. You do it or you don't, but it's going to fly, believe me. So, and they have to make a choice.
It was sometimes get the aircraft which were previously was serviced by those cheaper, not so knowledgeable MROs. And let me tell you, it's a disaster usually. If, for example, corrosion is not cleaned up during one C check, after 2 years it's gonna be way more.
So Vilius, Andrejus, it's a pleasure to have you here. Well, actually, I would usually say thank you for joining us and taking the time to, to have this interview. But actually, I can't say thank you for joining me. It's in your own house, because we're currently in a base maintenance hangar, and this is where your operations happen, right? So I can't say thank you for that. But it is a pleasure to have you guys sitting here. Obviously, we've talked to your colleagues before about their various departments, and today we're going to talk about base maintenance. But before we get into that, one question that we always ask at the start is, what got you into aviation? What was the aviation bug? What inspired you to kickstart your journey in aviation? There's always a story. There's always something that pushes someone into the industry. So what's that for you guys? Vilo, maybe you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. So I think it was not an easy decision, when you're graduating school, you still have to choose the path that you're, let's say, willing to go. And, without having experience in the market and don't have, clear understanding where to go. But still, I had some, opinions, some discussions from some family friends so they were into aviation, said, yeah, maybe it's worth give a try. So I started university at Vilnius Technical University. It was aviation mechanic engineering. So I graduated that, and during my studies, so I joined FL Technics because, by the time, I think FL Technics was more or less the only, say, private aviation company as an MRO, commercial aircraft MRO. So I joined there, and since then I'm here. So it's been really exciting thing for me.
And Andrejus, your story? What's behind your story?
Okay, so first of all, I was in high school, I think, and my neighbor just got a flight simulator in his PC. I think it was Microsoft 98 or something. And I just saw it, I tried it, and I just fell in love with so many button switches, with the aircraft, with the navigation. And yeah, I started following aviation in general, like photography, like news. And at the end of high school, there came a time to choose the profession. So I applied to Aviation Institute here in Vilnius. Of course, my family was against it because why do you want to fly so high? Just be a dentist or something, But I insisted. So yeah, I joined the Aviation Institute. Then FL Technics was providing the accelerator program to become the licensed engineer. So I rejoined that, and yeah, I'm still working in.
One interesting thing about that, because a lot of people who play, as I would know it, the Microsoft Simulator, the airline, the name of the game, the Microsoft Simulator, I believe it is, right? They're flying the planes, right? They would be inspired to be pilots. That's kind of like the journey they would take. But as I'm getting from you, you saw the multiple different buttons, the multiple different controls for the aircraft, and you're saying, okay, maybe I might not fly the plane. I would like to work on the engineering side of it. Was that the case?
Yeah, actually, because I just understood that flying would be boring at some point. Because if everything goes well, you just fly the same routes, with no problem, same weather. But to get inside the aircraft, to learn all the intricacies of a system, how they designed, was like the first choice, because I couldn't find the information, the technical information I wanted, online, obviously. So yeah, I started to look in the technical field of aviation, and I've been happy ever since.
Which is quite interesting for both of you, because if you look at the aggregate of your cumulative experience, you're approaching 3, if not 4 decades of experience within the maintenance industry. Obviously, Vilo, when I, look into your history, you started out as an aviation mechanic, and then you transitioned over to the commercial side of things. Andrejus, you started out again in the engineering mechanic role, but you stayed within that role, and now you're in a lead certifying position, more like a supervision type of role. Now, could you talk a little bit more about what you do today? Just a brief overview before we dive into the main topic.
So for today, as a technical development manager, and on my way to the new position, to different region and different responsibilities. My day started today just as usual, getting a coffee, answering some emails, and arriving here with you, because actually I'm based in Vilnius. But yeah, simple as that.
So photo shoot and video is normal for you, yeah?
Usually
It's a daily thing for him, yeah?
because I'm kind of very photogenic,
And Vilo, some of your operations?
So I'm now responsible for the sales. So I have a nice and good team in Vilnius and Kaunas here. So same as Andrejus, today started coming to Kaunas. I try to come once or twice a week to Kaunas. Usually I'm more working in Vilnius airport, so here, but it's also always good, to come here and there and to understand how customers are doing, how the team is doing as well. So basically my responsibility and my team responsibility is to make, the hangars look like they're now full. And of course to gather and to have a good financial result at the end of the year.
Well, as we can all see right now, the hangars are quite full, which is a great sign on both your parts, I would say. Again, still in this initial introduction phase here. Obviously, looking at FR Technics, global operations happening across multiple different continents. Looking at your workforce, you're looking at a team of over 3,000 people, right? You've got a diversified portfolio of capabilities, base, line maintenance, logistics, and all the corresponding, MRO operations. Looking at that, can you just give a short overview of FR Technics today, from the base maintenance point of view, how the operations are, where you are, and how you are navigating MRO? Vilo, let's go with
So
you.
yeah, I can share a bit more. So from base maintenance perspective, so our very first base and facility was in Vilnius. Then we expanded here to Kaunas. We also acquired some external company like Storm Aviation back in UK. So now they have a hangar in Prestwick in Scotland. Then we expanded to the eastern side, Asia Pacific, so in Bali. And in 2024 November, so we opened another hangar in Bali, and initially it was Jakarta. And the most recent project that Andrejus will be driving forward by the end of this year, so it will be Dominican Republic facility. So this is the core of our operations. So here in all facilities we are, say, unified by the aircraft types that we're maintaining. So it's mostly narrow bodies, 737 Classic NG Maxes and the Airbus A320 CO Neo. However, in Vilnius, we're having also some extra additional types like Embraer 170, 190, which we just recently added. So it's kind of a new thing for us, but it looks very promising, let's say like that.
And actually, maybe even just to add on to that, I know Vilius just mentioned about Punta Cana. Maybe just give us a bit of a teaser trailer. We're going to speak about it a little bit later, but just give us a little bit of a teaser trailer. Exactly.
Yes. So coming back to Punta Cana, so yeah, it's very exciting location, very new market, new regulations, and And yeah, I'm very excited to talk about it if you want to hear it.
Now, diving into our main conversation today, which is MRO, but not just MRO, but why it's relevant today. Obviously, we're seeing a very different market today, right? We've got a post, and people always give this comparison. There's the pre-COVID, right, 2019 and before era, where MROs, airlines, and the aviation industry, they were operating in one way, right? Then you have the COVID period, obviously, which came by, and then now we are living in what people could call the post-COVID era, or not just post-COVID, but a recovered era. And there's obviously different behaviors in the industry in terms of how MROs are acting, how airlines are acting. What are some of the biggest differences that you've seen in comparing how things were post-COVID and how things are now from an MRO perspective?
So I think, after the COVID, as I'm speaking from an MRO perspective, so we got hit. I think all the players in this market got hit by the supply chain things. Raw material availability. Again, war in Ukraine also added there as well. Logistics, availability of the same raw material. So things got slower. But let's say we're seeing the market is recovering, and especially speaking about the approach of the operators. So we started noticing that they're now contracting the MROs for more long term rather than short term or mid term that they used to do before the COVID. So now the airlines are coming to secure the capacity in the market for, I don't know, from 5 to 10 years or even more. We have heard and we have discussed some opportunity for 14 years, so which is quite long time gap, and you don't really know from a raw perspective how the market will look like in 14 years. So it's kind of a guess game, but still the airlines and the traffic recovered. Number of aircraft are in the market are rising, meaning that more maintenance is required, and the biggest players, so they understand that. So what they're trying to do is to secure as much capacity in the future for them as possible, because they understand that it can be a bottleneck for their operations. So basically, it won't, if they would not have sufficient capacity in the market for maintenance checks, means that they will not be able to have their increased presence in the market and take their own market share. So they're kind of working in this direction.
Yeah, Andrejus.
And actually, during the pandemic, many airlines lost a lot of people. Some were retiring, some were let go. They changed their professions. And at least here in FL Technics, at least from maintenance side, we didn't have any downtimes. So we retained the people, who even attracted new talents here. And I believe in the post-COVID world, especially the airlines themselves, they just had to restart, especially the technical part of their fleet management. And we just were ready and waiting for them,
But a key thing to what you've both mentioned here. So obviously, the airlines have played. You've mentioned the airlines in the sense that their behavior, or rather their approach to fleet management, to maintenance, Vilius, as you described, again, looking more in a long-term sense of view, right? You've briefly mentioned, Andrejus, how you as FL Technics, you stayed ready during that time, but were there any shifts in terms of your strategies now? Like, how are you dealing with that change coming in from the airline market and how they are, seeking maintenance, seeking to secure that capacity? Has that influenced or shifted any part of your strategies?
We see that transition from short-term planning to more long-term planning. And as Andrejus mentioned, so the market lost quite a lot of really skilled people during the COVID, because people just went to other industries, maybe which had more work to do rather than innovation. And after it, we will not have that backup that quickly, that new mechanics, new engineers coming to the market that quickly. So all MROs are understanding that, because what we see now, we go to any MRO exhibition, and we have at least every exhibition us approaching some construction company saying, guys, we need to build a hangar, but at least three different companies are coming. We need to build a hangar, but we have builders, but we don't have doers. So it's about the hands, because you can build a hangar, you can buy the nice and fancy tool, you can have that shiny nice hangar, but the hands are not there. So that's MRO's direction that are working towards, at least from our side, that we need to build up that backlog of technicians, of engineers. So yeah,
and especially retaining the talent, just keeping them current on the tasks. So of course, fortunately, the market during the pandemic had a lot of aircraft redeliveries, termination of leases between airlines and lessors, and we kind of capitalized on that. And we used those lessors redeliveries during the pandemic. So our staff just remained confident, competent, and we just continued after pandemic years. So
yeah, and that's another interesting topic that you touched. Who is active now in the market? So now active is the MRO, because the leasing companies are, let's say, living the best days, extending the leases and enjoying, nice weather and good contracts. So, but this somehow will come to an end, and there will be some redeliveries. Of course, some older MSNs, older aircraft, they're going to be scrapped for some spare parts, but still some portion will be redelivered. Because I don't believe that we'll have a good recovery of, Pratt & Whitney engine issues in the market. So still there will be some aircraft grounded, and those older MSNs will still be there. So end of leases will still be coming to MROs, but after the COVID, so majority of the customer portfolio, it was just regular airlines rather than leasing companies. But what we already see now, so leasing companies are getting back to the market, already asking how the slot station looks like, what's the availability, and so on. So it's coming, let's say, back more to normal percentage proportion airline to leasing company.
One aspect or multiple aspects that you've both mentioned right now. So obviously you mentioned the engine problems, that the industry is currently facing. You talked about redeliveries, forecasted redeliveries coming, aircraft on ground. One other aspect of that is that right now, a topic that's quite prevalent and, quite emphasized in the market is that there's a demand to both service in terms of MRO for newer generation aircraft as well as older generation aircraft, right? So that puts a lot of strain on the MRO industry just in general. Now, as FL Technics, you've mentioned that you were ready, right? You retained the talent and you were ready for that. But how are you dealing with, how are you seeing how the market is dealing with it, with this demand, and how are you dealing with it as well?
So what we see, again, the MRO, at least here in Europe, the landscape of MROs competition also changed. There are some MROs who shook a hand with those hangar builders, and yes, they have the physical slot where you can put the aircraft, but there are not a sufficient number of hands to work on the aircraft, So we see the tendency that in the market, some MROs are coming, selling the slot with quite, let's say, low utilization of manpower, slots, and some customers are buying that, and the infrastructure of that MRO is definitely not ready for some heavy checks. So they're more working on the lighter checks, C1, C2, or whatever. If you would bring them in 6-year or 12-year structure check, so it will be really sad days for them. But there are some MROs. Of course, there are other MROs who are constantly investing into the same people trainings, into new tooling, into new aircraft types, new generation aircraft types, the Maxes, the Neos, so because you want it or not, this is the future. So gathering already experience and doing that. So yes, there are let's say two streams. One is, yes, they're constantly preparing, training, buying equipment, and so on. And others are just kind of catching a good moment in the market when there is limited availability of the slots, making some good money until maybe the capacity in the market will get more stable. So then, if they're not ready, so it will be again, let's say, turbulence for them.
But especially working on the older aircraft, it's like a different aging aircraft problem. So it's okay, some structural problems we are already aware of that. Manufacturers are aware, but almost every time you can find something new on the older aircraft, and for some MROs, this is not beneficial to have the aircraft with a serious defect, which of course is going to be requiring a contact with the manufacturer, and the turnaround time is going to be extended. So, and of course, you need to have technical knowledge, experience with your guys with engineering, with NDT, sheet metal workers. Every B1 mechanic has to have experience with thorough disassembly, especially for serious defects. Of course, on the newer aircrafts, you do not get so as many, structural defects, but especially the engines have some intricacies, something not worked very well, but yeah, two different levels.
This transitions very nicely into one of the topics that we want to discuss today, which is, again, giving a comparison or giving an analytical view of in-house maintenance, right, to outsource maintenance, and the various other different types of maintenance organizations that may be there. And obviously, you've mentioned both about having that maintenance, that MRO infrastructure, but most importantly, having the hands within the infrastructure to be able to provide the service. So let's just set some context right now. How would you best describe, one, the different types of MRO providers out there, or the different types of them, in particular, again, in-house maintenance providers as well as outsourced maintenance providers? What would you define as the key differences there?
So maybe we can put like 3 segments of those MRO, how at least we see in this context of our discussion. So say there are independent MROs like ourselves, who are, say, private business. They don't have any ties with government or with airline, so they're just like working on their own. There is an MRO segment who is having in-house maintenance, which belongs to certain airline, which is also not owned by the public or the government. And there is the third one, let's say also in-house MRO, who is part of the government-owned some entity, either directly owned by the government or via airline branch, which is also owned by the government. So, say the third one, I would say it's least effective MRO, because each segment has different KPIs. Say independent MRO has a KPI, firstly, without any safety, KPIs of aviation safety. There is profit, of course. There is profit, and also we're really sensitive to the efficiency. So this is the key thing for us. For the airline-owned MRO, which is also private business, so their KPI is to have as many checks as quick as possible, and sometimes they're not really interested in the costs. Sometimes it can be really much more expensive than the market third-party MRO can offer some maintenance, but their KPI is to support the airline. So if they answer the question themselves that we're completely a cost center supporting the airline, and to make their aircraft as let's say as more in operations as possible. So that's their KPIs, because in this way they're not selling maintenance to other parties. Their KPI is to sell the seats, the flight seats, not some man hours or maintenance. So the more aircraft availability, the better is for them. And the third one, I think some in this segment is they haven't yet answered themselves who they really are, because they do also in-house maintenance. They also buy portion from the third-party MROs, from independent MROs, but also they're doing some in-house maintenance as well. So it's a big mix. And if there is no specific rules, there is no specific concept, what are they doing and what are the KPIs? It's a bit difficult to keep let's say within the market. And we can compare each other, but when we're going to the market and discussing with our customers in some tenders, so that third part of MROs, so sometimes they don't really care about the pricing. It's just a mere number for them. So it's either 56 euros per man hour or 25 euros per man hour. It doesn't really make a big difference. It means that they just need to have the hangar busy at any cost, and that's it. So sometimes it's a bit tricky and difficult to compete with those, but market is market.
You've given a very detailed view, and you mentioned KPIs there. You mentioned some of the commercial behavior, that the different organizations, MRO organizations might take. Andrejus, I want to come to you to, get a bit more of a view on the technical side, right? In terms of how would these, and, if we to describe the different segments. So you've got in-house, you've got independent, as, Vilius corrected there, and as well as the third party, right? From a technical and an operational side, how would you describe how their operations are different?
Okay, so of course, from engineering perspective, I think every engineer wants to work on the same aircrafts. And they like if aircraft come in after 2 years for another heavy check, and you open your previously inspected zone and you see how any things might develop there. New defects, if you did everything correctly, and of course all the quirks of aircraft as well. Maybe some kind of fault is sometimes popping up, so it's like a challenging working on the same aircraft. And of course another plus is just the same procedures if you're working for the same airlines. So the documentation. You know how to raise the question to the manufacturer or something else, and it's kind of like the efficiency grows. Yeah. And for example, from a different coin is independent. So independent MROs may have a lot of clients, different airlines, different lessors, and they bring their own procedures or how to approach any bigger problem. Some bigger airlines clients even has redefined maintenance procedures like standard practice manual. So even maintenance action where you have been already proficient on previous aircrafts, this airline might bring different procedures. You do it that way and not this way. So it's a little bit more challenging for, every year, every season, different procedures, but as well, it keeps you on your toes and you just learning everything, and your knowledge database is just growing.
In particular, I want to stay on this angle, right, of and the two types, which is in-house and independent, right? Let's start off with in-house. Now, obviously, both of you have given, a very general overview of, how they think or how they operate, be it from a commercial standpoint, a KPI standpoint, a technical standpoint. Let's build the picture a little bit more about in-house, right? What are some of the pros and cons that you could say would be associated with in-house MRO provider, right? How are they approaching the market? How is the market viewing them, right? What would be the pros and cons that would come with that? Vilo, you want to maybe take this one first?
Yes, I will start from independent MRO. So of course the good thing for the airline when coming to such type of the MRO is flexibility and willingness to adapt to the customer. As Andrejus mentioned, each customer has its own procedures, so that kind of MRO, they will try to do its best, to adjust and to make those procedures work in real life. So good. Another really, I think, important thing comparing to independent and the third segment, government or state-owned some MRO, which has the airline. So the choice who is more important, because when you have in the hangar your own in-house airline and you have a third-party customer, who is your priority? You have to answer yourself. Where do I put, if there is a case that I need to arrange some overtime and both aircraft are, let's say, on zero stress configuration, which one I do prioritize? So in the independent MRO, so there is not that question. There is, let's say, at least in our facility, it's a dedicated bay, and that bay is responsible for your project, and they don't mix things between them. So I think this also brings confidence for the customer, for the airline, that things could be and things will be managed, in a proper way, not just throwing them to lower.
So you're highlighting the fact that if it was an in-house MRO, they would prioritize more their in-house aircraft or in-house airline aircraft.
Yes.
And then if it was an independent provider, if I get this correctly, there is no prioritization. Everything is a priority.
Exactly. So because at the end of the day, I guess the in-house maintenance, they might get a call from very top level people saying, guys, everything is fine what you have in the hangar, but we need to have this specific aircraft in the air within approximately next 2 days. You do it or you don't, but it's going to fly, believe me. So and they have to make a choice. We always go to the exhibitions, and there is a really nice gentleman who is giving really good, let's say, insights. He has always a slide of, it's called Sophie choice. It means to choose the best from all worst scenarios. When the airline, the MRO could be also part of the OEM, and they're delivering not only basically the new, let's say, Pratt Whitney engine, so they're delivering the new engine. Where to put it? To the aircraft assembly line, to the aircraft that is currently ongoing the heavy check, or to sell to some third party, who is willing to pay anything in the world, So he's calling that Sophie's choice, So this is where the in-house MROs taking third-party customers always have, that decision to be made.
Andrejus, any topic?
And actually, as a third party, they are always incentivized to be more efficient, because of course safety and airworthiness comes in parallel with the profits. And even the people in the even technical stuff, they are just wanting to have a profitable company. They just want everything efficient. So to the process, we get a lot of input from our mechanics, team leaders, everyone. And I believe in the first party or airline MROs, they are not really interested in that. They just, of course, need to release the aircraft so they fly, but not really from the innovation, side.
Some people would argue that having the in-house, and we're still on the topic of in-house MRO here, where having the in-house MRO, you can manage your capacity or fleet management, right? There may be a perception that you can manage that better because it's your capacity, you have control over it, and there's no external influence, right? What would you have to say about that?
I think that's a very logical thing, and if I were in the shoes, especially in the ultra low cost carriers that we have here in Europe, the tendency is very clear. They understand that the maintenance can be bottleneck, especially the capacity going forward. So what they're doing, they're trying to secure it. So either by long-term contracts or increasing in-house capacity. So, and that's, I think, a good thing for them, as long as they maintain efficient maintenance, let's say, and the cost is still reasonable. Of course, it can be higher to compared to the market, but still it's in the reasonable level. I think that's a very logical thing to do, because then, from airline perspective, is just looking, so you don't put your operations in jeopardy. Not maybe having maintenance checks done, I know, in 5 years. So basically, you have to ground, 20% of your fleet, because some provider sold their lines for more expensive to another customer, and you're just left hanging dry. So I think that step is making a big sense, and it was just quite a recent acquisition from another ultra low cost carrier. So they were not yet in the heavy maintenance themselves, only maybe line maintenance, but also they acquired quite a facility, just to also, I believe, to control the maintenance in their hands. So yeah, but again, you have to stay in good shape. You have to still not fully go away from the market, and to catch the trends, and to still be as efficient as you can. Then this model can work.
But actually, regarding the capacity of airlines, of course, they can secure their future capacity, but they kind of predict. But aviation is a very dynamic business, so any airworthiness directive can throw a wrench into all the works. Yeah. Problem with the new engines, some kind of new finding on the aircraft, and at that point, the airline needs to find additional capacity for that, or the aircrafts are going to be grounded. So, and that's where we come in usually.
Yes, exactly. That transitions very nicely into independent MROs, where you find that you have a very diverse portfolio, right? In terms of, the service that you deliver, right? You can cater to, again, the different procedures that different airlines might have, the different fleets that they might have, and in some of the aspects, being able to operate in different regions, not just in the region limited by the home carrier, which owns let's say the in-house MRO. So let's now talk more about the independent. What does operations for independent MROs, what does that look like? Most importantly, what does the competition look like for independent MROs in the market?
So again, it's not a easy walk in the park, and things doesn't make easy. When we have firstly, shortage of technical staff within the market, because what happens that MROs starting to poach each other technical staff, rising, the salary by €1, then another €1, and you're just ending up, paying for that same technician sometimes ridiculous amount of money, and that doesn't really help, to have a sustainable competition, let's say. So at the end of the day, it can become a game, who has a deeper pocket, and just comparing maybe to some in-house MROs that they have. So sometimes they're also willing to pay some ridiculous amount of money for some technicians, just to have, again, that control of maintenance, that control of capacity. But still, comparing competition, so you have to understand where are you at, and where are you good, and what are you selling. So at least our sales point is, let's say, leading quality, but we know that we're not the cheapest ones, but you have to pay for the quality, for the turnaround time, which is shorter than average. But again, we're not the cheapest. That triangle: cheap, fast, and quick. So pick two. So this is how we can describe. but certainly it doesn't help to compete in a normal, regular way when also some new players coming into the market, still not really understanding how things are working here, and selling their maintenance for half price, for some maybe sometimes reasonable, let's say questionable quality level, and some operators are buying that. That's all what they need. So we have to pick your customer. We have to pick your tier of the customers, and we have to aim for that. So I think more or less throughout the years we have picked our customers' portfolio, and we're feeling quite confident.
Andrejus?
And actually, it was sometimes to get the aircraft which were previously was serviced by those cheaper, not so knowledgeable MROs. And let me tell you, it's a disaster usually. So at the end, for the operator, is gonna cost more, because if for example corrosion is not cleaned up during one C check, after 2 years it's gonna be way more difficult. Yeah. And of course those cheaper MROs, they just kind of do like a paperwork signing, not really extending the AT.
I guess there's a bit of complacency that creeps in.
Well, they have to work cheaper since they are selling cheaper, so they cannot, extend the AT of the aircraft or buy some very serious components. So they just skip it over, and operators are happy because they did the check from outside. The aircraft looks good. Few years down the line, usually it bites back.
Yeah.
Let's actually stick on that point a little bit there, because now, as I would understand it, as an independent MRO, each airline with different fleets, different procedures, again, they come in with a different, standard procedures that must be followed by you as an independent MRO if they come to you. And that same airline, if it had its own in-house MRO, again, those procedures are more fixed to the fleet. They're not really going to vary outside of the different types within the airline fleet which they service. Now, as an independent MRO, how have you seen navigating having that diverse portfolio, again, adjusting to the different standards, the different procedures that each airline has, the airlines that you work with? How have you navigated that?
So it's actually quite a difficult task, especially from a technical standpoint. And one simple example is the cabin, the inside of aircraft, and the quality of how does it look. Yeah. So different airlines has absolutely different standards of, the cleanliness, the damages, the paint finishes of a cabin, any discoloration and so on. And it's actually quite difficult for us whenever we get a brand new airline, brand new customer. We always do a very thorough walk around the cabin with asking, do you want to fix this defect? Is it just a touch paint, repaint everything? What about the carpet, the quality of the carpet? How? And after a few aircraft, we already know the standard, so we can leave a technical representative to be, and we know how to go. And of course, for the in-house MRO, they already know that, so it's a little bit quicker. But for us, it just takes a little bit more time. But usually we're a little bit better, especially at paint finishes inside, and for example, some other MROs.
But you get during those requests of special customer procedure. So it's not only that we need to do like that, but sometimes we even pick out those sometimes requirements and implement ourselves, because sometimes they really make sense, and it sometimes even makes us more efficient. So it's not only it's a bad thing or you spend more time on that, but sometimes it really makes sense. So broaden your understanding how things should be working.